Ready?
Chris is on.
Yes, sir. We are ready, sir. Whatever you say, sir.
I'll call this meeting of the Executive Committee to order. This was posted by the clerk's office in accordance with the appropriate rules. We're all here, including Supervisor Bossert on Zoom. So we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll do the consent agenda first. I need a motion and a second.
I would move to accept, Mr. Chairman.
I can
A
second that.
motion by Supervisor Mary, second by Supervisor Shadron. Any discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Passes. Our clerk has asked that her items be moved to the top because she has a family commitment tonight, so,
Youngest turned 9, or second youngest turned 9.
so we'll start with her quarterly report and then do her action items and proceed from there.
Okay. So I can go over the initiatives that are on here. I won't go into extreme detail because a couple of them are part of items that are further down on the agenda. But my first item is our marriage license and passport appointment system. This one has already been completed. We went to scheduling appointments during COVID, so 2020, and historically have been scheduling everything through email. So we had a staff member that was receiving emails and then corresponding directly with the individuals coming in or looking to schedule an appointment. And everything was done very manually and added to a calendar that we shared as an office. And so with the new system, we are utilizing TimeTap. Everything is automated. Members of the public are able to go onto our website at all hours of the day or night and schedule appointments that work for them right away. And then they are auto sent reminders and different information and checklists and things that they need for scheduling their marriage licenses and passports. And we've actually had quite a few people from out of county scheduling as well, just because we have more availability than lots of other surrounding counties. Any questions on that?
Yes, is the out-of-county thing working smoothly?
So that's my next one, the marriage license law changes and compliance with that. We started July 1st enforcing the new state regulations regarding marriage licenses. We had been trying to get that law through pre-COVID, so that was another 2021, that it just ended up sitting on the wayside because many other things took priority at that time. But so it was finally passed last year and went into effect July 1st of this year, where couples are able to apply in any county in the state of Wisconsin and then also file their marriage license in any county in the state of Wisconsin. So previously you were required to apply in the county that you resided in. Even if you worked downtown Milwaukee, you would not be allowed to apply for your marriage license there. You'd be required to take like a half day off work to come here and do your marriage license. And we also had individuals or couples that would come in that thought where they were getting married dictated where you had to apply. So we would be sending people away. So it was a customer service nightmare. And it finally went through and we updated all our information on our website, social media, sharing of that information, and then all of our printed documents, and started enforcing that as of July. And so actually we've had quite a few people coming in because we have more availability. Throughout the summer months, we were open 7 to 5:30 rather than 8 to 4:30, Monday through Thursday. And we offered early morning appointments, late appointments, and people truly appreciated that. And we had couples coming from all over the place for that and for passports. Yep.
One more question. This is still those strictly Wisconsin residents. Out-of-state residents cannot use this system.
No, out-of-state residents can apply in any county as well.
They can.
Yep, so if you lived in Illinois right along the border, but were getting married in, say, Door County, historically, you would have had to have applied where you were getting married, so they would have had to apply in Door County. Now they would be able to cross the border and apply there.
So Illinois residents could technically come here and get their license for a wedding up in
Yeah,
Algoma or wherever.
it's more likely they would just cross the border right across and do Kenosha or whatever, but yes, that is possible.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yep. Any other questions on those? Okay. And then the last two items are the two items that we're currently working on, and you'll see, we talked about in a little bit. But we have an initiative of hand count audits of election results, doing a full hand count. So we will go into that in further detail down the road. And then programming of elections in-house rather than contracting that service out.
Okay. Any questions? Well, let's move on to action item 6D then.
Okay, so that is the utilization of strategic priority funds to fund election management software and the upgrades associated with that. Margie is here if you have any questions regarding the funding. That does need to be approved at this committee to utilize the strategic priority funds. What we're looking at doing is beginning to program all of our elections here in-house rather than contracting with Dominion as we have in the past. So my predecessor prior to April of 2016 had historically programmed the machines they had at that time for election purposes. And then when she determined that they would go to the Dominion ICE machines that we have now, she decided that we would not be programming in-house. So the software we currently have is the light version. We need to pay to upgrade to the full version to be able to program.
Before we go into a lot of discussion, we need a motion and a second. Moved by Supervisor Schulteis, second by Supervisor Shadman.
Action items. Will we still be using Dominion machines?
Yes, we
But it's a different software that we're controlling it, or?
It's the same software. It's just a program that gives me the capability of inputting all of the data that I compile already. And then I'm able to actually put it all together, finalize it all, rather than having Dominion do so.
So we're bringing more of it in-house?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and it is important to note that there will be ongoing expenses, HMA fees that are increased. That will be a part of my budget moving forward. But those will go through a budget amendment to take care of those.
Do you know approximately how much those fees are ranging?
So one of them, I believe, is $11,000 more than we're currently paying, and we are going to, at least for the first year or so, contract with Command Central to support us in programming, provide training and things like that. And that is $20,000.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote.
Can I just make a comment? I'd just like to mention before you vote that I think this is something that Ashley should be commended for. I think anything we can do to pull things away from Dominion and have more control, and Ashley, who I think does a phenomenal job to be able to have her hands on it, is a positive. With all of the concern out there about election integrity, for her to step up and take the additional workload on, not to mention the additional expense, I think is something that this committee should do and endorse fully. And I commend her for that, making that move. She came to me 6 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, something like that. So I really commend her for doing that.
Mr.
I
Chairman.
agree. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to also echo those same comments. I think we need to make our public aware that we're bringing so much more of this control in-house,
Absolutely.
inside the county, such that we're not dependent on outside software, outside configurations or communications. And I think we need to make the public aware in Washington County that we're making these steps to ensure greater voter integrity in the county.
I agree.
Yes. Absolutely. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item is the general election hand count.
Okay, so that item, I did not have any attachments in the packet, just so you're aware. And this is something that County Executive Showman and myself had been discussing a few weeks ago.
May I ask us to hold on a second? So I want to make everybody aware that I am a poll worker for West Bend. So the decision here could financially impact me since I could be called upon as a poll worker to facilitate this. So I'll be recusing myself from this conversation and kind of turning my screen away. Thank you.
Acknowledged.
So I should start with, it's important to note that we do audit nearly every single election here. By choice, we're not required to, but at our Board of Canvass meeting, if you've ever watched it, we now live stream them and you can view them in person. It's a public meeting, but we randomly select 2 reporting units from the entire county and hand count 2 races from the ballots that we selected to hand count. So we do that already. What we're suggesting doing for the 2022 general election is hand counting the entire county as a part of an audit, doing the top state race and the top federal race, which would be governor, lieutenant governor, and then the U.S. Senate race, and hand counting all of those. So what we're asking you today is to support the funding of that. It's obviously an expense to the county. We would not be requiring the municipalities to participate or to fund anything, so there would be no cost to them. We will likely be asking for volunteer paid poll workers or municipal clerks to work if they're interested. But all of the cost other than that would be on the county. And so we're asking for up to $50,000 of strategic priority funds to fund this. I don't think it'll cost that much. In 2016, we spent roughly $36,000 on the recount. That hand count audit will be run a little bit differently. There's certain things that we are not going to be doing that we did do during the recount in 2016, which will adjust the timeline a little bit. But I can answer any questions you have, or Josh can if you have any.
Before we do discuss, we need a motion and a second. So
I so move.
moved by Supervisor Mary, second by Supervisor Schulteis. So comments?
Well, here again, I think we need to commend the clerk's office for taking this step forward on this. And just another effort to reassure the voters of Washington County that we're trying to stay ahead of any potential fraud. We're doing this hand counting. I think it's I think it reflects well on the administration and the leadership of Washington County. We're going to make these steps to, just to drive home the fact that we're doing everything we can to assure voter integrity.
I concur.
And I would just say that we take voter integrity, election integrity seriously.
Very serious.
It's very serious, yes. Thank you.
And it's been a big concern. You
Yes.
see it in the news lately and
Yes.
talk on the street. So anything to answer?
The only thing I would mention is we get a lot of commentary and a lot of open records requests about that Dominion systems and the election machines and how do we know the vote count is really accurate. And our hope is this will really be an audit of sorts that really compares those hand done ballots compared to what the computer is telling us that the printout is saying. So you can really go to people and say, okay, this is 100% effective. And if not, we can point to the data that says otherwise. So I think it's a huge step forward. And it's not going to resolve every person who has every theory of what's happening with everything. But I do think it's a huge step to be able to help people trust the voting process, because if we lose that, we've got major problems.
I just have a question.
Supervisor Schultes.
So Ashley, so can you explain the difference between the recent public request for the cast vote records?
CVR.
Yes, yes.
Yep, so the CVR record is something that we've been getting a request for, I probably have at least 20 requests for that document. Prior to 2022, our Dominion voting machines did not have the capability of creating that report. Once we upgraded our systems in 2022, now moving forward, we can create the cast vote record. It is just a file associated with a ballot as to how the ballot was read by the machines. We have prior to 2022, a generic version that just says who was counted. But the actual cast vote record file shows pen density, it just takes into consideration everything when it sees that ballot coming through. But so those are the types of records requests. I do have to say, I'm looking forward to being able to educate the public even more about the election process, doing this audit or this full-blown audit. Everything since 2020, being able to share the information of all of our processes has truly helped restore public faith in the election process. The moment you're able to share how things actually operate and how things run, they understand more so. It's been interesting having individuals come in and think that we can provide them with how the machine actually read their vote, which is not the case. But when going through the education of all of our processes, they're extremely grateful. So I think this will be truly beneficial in restoring that faith in our systems and in the people in Washington County and how they run safe and secure elections.
And they get ahead of Supervisor Mary. I've seen people come in to the office and have concerns, and your explanation of the process and all the cross checks and redos is great. So we appreciate that. So, any further comment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. So the next item is F, recommendations for tax deed properties. Let's have a motion and a second first this time.
Also move.
I'll second.
Earl Mary makes the motion, Supervisor Mary, Supervisor Schultes second. Did you get those, Mike?
Yep.
Okay. So you should have the list of the tax deed properties in your packet. I want to bring up the photos so I can just show you where they're located.
Oh, good.
Just a brief history for those that haven't been a part of the tax deed process. This used to go to the administrative committee, and now it's going to the executive committee because we don't have an administrative committee. But every 5-6 years, we receive tax deed properties from the treasurer's office for those that do not have a mortgage on their property and have not paid taxes or property taxes in that amount of time. So you'll see this more so. We'll have another list I believe in the spring. But these are the properties that we have right now and we're recommending taking. All of them except for 2 that are on the list.
What page is that?
So
look under that. This is the master. Okay.
1 second. How do I?
Just you gotta plug the HDMI from right there up.
Oh, it's that one, not this one. Sorry. Thank you. Any questions on the tax deed process?
A brief explanation might be in order.
Sure. Okay, so once we receive the tax deed properties from the treasurer's office, we bring them to this committee after I've met with Brad and And then also have checked with local municipalities, the Planning and Parks Department or Land Use Department, and review any red flags that would be associated with the properties. And then we bring them here. We request approval to take the deeds to the properties, which is the first agenda item. And then, and direct the county attorney's office to send a last chance letter to the property owners. That last chance letter, I believe, provides 25 days for them to actually redeem the property. But during that time, the properties are actually already deeded in Washington County's name. The individuals then have to pay in full, not a portion. They have to pay the entirety of the taxes, special assessments, and any penalties that are associated with the property. And then it is deeded back to the owner if they were to redeem. If that time expires and they don't redeem, then we determine what the next steps with the property will be, which are likely for us to put them on Wisconsin surplus and provide them for bid. And so the second item after this, or the next item after this, is to set those minimum bid amounts right away. Our goal is to sell the properties and get them deeded over to the new owners if they sell prior to the end of the year so they can get back on the tax roll. It is important to note as well that the properties, the amount that we sell them for, we only can recoup our costs, so back taxes, interest penalties. The municipalities are made whole with any special assessments that may be associated with the property, and any legal notices or costs incurred by the county. We no longer are keeping the proceeds that exceed that amount. That actually ends up going back to the owner, prior owner. So I just will start by going through these. And the first two on the list, if you're following along with the spreadsheet, are, one is a garage, which is the one that owes $762.35. And then the second property is the condo. So in that condominium area, they are, garages are deeded separately from the actual condos. But so these two are owned by the same person, or were owned by the same person. And we are looking to take the condo and the garage at this time. We are also, when we're setting the minimum bid amount, we would like to sell them together, even though they're two separate deeds, just so you know.
Question, as we look through these, it has first year delinquent. Should we assume that means that there has been no effort or taxes collected? As example, the first one here going back to 2014, that's 8 years ago. There's been nothing paid on this in 8 years?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for clarifying.
And very interesting in that case, he paid taxes on the duplex or the condo 2 years after he stopped paying on the garage, so anyway. Not to get too far down in the weeds.
So those are those two, and I can go over the amount that we'd like to set the minimum bid for, and then we can make separate motions. Okay. So those two together, we would like to set the minimum bid as a $17,000 total, which covers both amounts, and I just round up to the nearest thousand. Okay, so the next one on the list is in the city of West Bend. It's currently owned by 5R Processors, and they owe $143,515.10. This property we are not recommending taking. There's significant contaminants on the property, and lots of other issues. Likely needs to be raised by the city, and so we just are at this time not recommending taking that.
Did you say you had pictures of these properties?
Not this one.
Okay.
No. It's a warehouse facility, and the company was actually, all of their facilities a few years ago were raided, and head leadership was charged with different felonies. So. And then the next one on the list is in the city of West Bend as well. And this one I do have a photo of. It is, if you're familiar with the city of West Bend, but what was Old Barton, it is the vacant lot right next to Mauricio's Pizza. That
Okay.
was a home, I believe, but was raised by the city of West Bend. So that property, back taxes, interest and penalties are $12,538.26. And we are recommending the minimum bid amount be $13,000.
Okay,
And according to the city, the land value is $27,000.
Okay.
And then the next property is in the town of Barton. The back taxes, interest and penalties are $18,790.19. And that property is actually a home. So you can see it on the map. It's on Beaver Dam Road.
are there still people living there?
Is it occupied?
I believe so.
Oh.
And Scott can speak to this. This is the one with the,
It's a daughter, the daughter that's living there. I was introduced to her by the former treasurer, and she signed a paper that said she'd continue to pay payments, which never happened.
so we are recommending taking that property and setting the minimum bid amount to $19,000.
Okay.
And then the next property on our list is in the village of Germantown. Back taxes, interest and penalties total $41,810.07. This one is also a home. And on Happy Hollow Lane in the village of Germantown.
It's right by my house.
And that one, we are looking at setting the minimum bid amount at $42,000.
Okay,
That's occupied as well?
We're not certain. Mailing address is in Arizona.
Okay.
Okay. And then the next property is in the village of Richfield. Back taxes, interest and penalties totaled at $12,312.99. This is also a home. I do not know if it's occupied, but it's right on Highway 175. And it's the blue outlined here.
okay.
And that one, we are looking at setting the minimum bid amount at $13,000.
May I ask a theoretical question? You set the minimum bid at 13,000, and the day before the auction or the action is taken, the homeowner comes forward and says, I'll pay the $12,312.99. Are they still eligible to pay it off at that time, or do they need to meet the minimum bid?
No, they are required to meet the deadline that the county attorney's office provides to them, which is 25 days.
5 days.
Yeah.
If they don't make that deadline, then they have to enter the bid.
Yes.
Okay.
And we have had that happen in the past with previous tax deed properties where they ignored the notices and then finally someone else in their family got involved and they tried to redeem and it was too late at that time. They were already going to Wisconsin surplus.
There is a deadline for which it's over.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
Thank you.
The next property is in the town of Polk. This one, back taxes, interest and penalties total $1,647.46. And this is, it looks like an outlot here. Let me see
The
that.
pond?
Part of a subdivision, maybe?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. So
Not
we are
even
recommending
buildable.
setting the minimum bid amount at $1,700. We do send notices to neighboring and adjoining property owners, just so you're aware as well.
Okay, that's a nice courtesy.
The next property is in the city of Hartford. Back taxes, interest and penalties total $36,690.49. That one is a vacant lot. There used to be a home there and the city raised it, which is why the back taxes, interest and penalties are so high. Because that raising was added.
They charge a fee for
Fee for
raising.
doing that, all right.
Yep.
Gotta recoup our
And so that one, we are recommending setting the minimum bid at 37,000. Historically, we've always tried to recoup the total amount. You know, if for some reason this one were to not sell for that, I believe it's not, the land value according to the city of Hartford is less than the 37,000. We can reassess that and talk about it again if it does not sell.
Okay.
So
we adjust the price
we
then.
adjust, yep, we have done that before. Not a lot, they usually sell, but we have. So the next property on our list is in the city of West Bend. This one. This one is this long lot here. Back taxes, interest and penalties are $12,059.43. The property, the home is still on the property. It is dilapidated and the windows and things are boarded up. The city of West Bend did say that it likely needs to be raised. And there's also some sort of medical lien on the property. But we're not certain. I couldn't get a hold of DHS to verify the actual amount. Their lien doesn't have an amount. It just says regarding health related services that the prior owner incurred. So this property, you know, if there are liens associated with it, we are still and could potentially put it out for auction. And then any buyer would then be liable for those liens that would be associated with it.
So the liens would go with the property?
Yeah,
Okay,
This asking price would not resolve the lien, is that correct?
correct.
Certain liens are wiped out, but others aren't, and usually if we're talking federal or state liens, those tend to survive, so. You take the property as you find it if you're a bidder, and some things become your responsibility, including even potentially evictions of people who won't leave.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
So that property, we are recommending setting the minimum bid amount at 13,000. And then the last property on your list is also in the city of West Bend. That one I do not have a photo of. I do not recommend taking that property. Back taxes, interest and penalties total $112,997.56. This property was a factory, I believe, and there's significant contamination on the property. The factory building itself has been raised by the city of West Bend, but we are still at this time not recommending taking it.
All right, so what happens to it?
The taxes keep being assessed, and then at the 11th year, I believe it is, the 11th year falls off, and they continue to move on until it's either cleaned up or someone takes care of that back taxes and all the other things. It's a burden on society.
Okay,
This property, I believe, was a brownfield property at one point. Is that correct, Deb? JH Bailey. That's okay. The brownfield property in West Bend, that's been a potential tax deed property. JH,
Yes, that's a brownfield site.
yes. So we definitely do not want that to be the owner of it.
okay.
And so then we need a motion to take the properties and then a motion to set the minimum bid amounts as recommended.
So we have a motion for the first item. So
Does it go for
Any-
all of them or?
any more questions? We can vote for that.
Okay, one by one.
No,
No, we'll just make two motions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, we're making a motion to just accept those properties that you said we're gonna
To take the
accept,
deed, yeah, and direct the
Not-
county attorney's office.
not
to
those
set-
two.
Not the two that I said
Okay.
not to take,
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
And combining the one into one sale.
questions, concerns?
None here?
No, I'm good.
I
Okay.
would so move to the language that the clerk has stated.
No,
Second.
you already did.
Yeah.
All right,
We have a motion for the first thing, right? Mike?
Yes.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then that passes for the second, the minimum bid amounts. We need a motion in a second.
I can make a motion.
Supervisor Shadran,
Yep. Awesome.
Supervisor Bossert had the second. Any discussion? The amounts are all appropriate, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good.
And so then, once these properties sell, the actual sale amount will come back and then it'll end up going to this committee and then county board.
Okay.
Right. So then we'll proceed back to the discussion items. Thank you, Ashley. Finance report, quarterly.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's not quite evening yet.
Not quite. Trying to keep it that way. So the report was provided to you. Essentially, all of finance goals kind of center around our core philosophy in finance, that we're basically responsible for being careful stewards of the county's funds and all the assets, and timely and accurately capturing that information then for financial reporting and tracking that we're responsible to do, including compliance requirements. So all of our goals kind of center around that approach, and a lot of departments that we work with have goals that will interact with us. So if there's anything specific you want me to touch on, I will. Otherwise, the one item I just wanted to draw your attention to is that the last page, or the second to last page on here, we've got one goal that's currently off track. We are having some issues getting responses from the credit card processors. I don't know why we want to give them more money. So I'm just not having any luck getting them to respond timely. So we've been reaching out to the processor that our treasurer's office has recently switched to for the tax payments. I've had a couple of emails that saying, oh, sorry for the delay, we'll get back to you this week, and then nothing. So we're still kind of waiting on that. Otherwise, everything else we are on track, and no issues to report. So.
Questions, discussion?
No,
Good.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
still afternoon.
Yes.
Good.
Human Resources Quarterly Report.
Now that's pressure, right? 3 minutes, I can't read that.
Sure you can.
Do your
Got
best.
my report, thanks a lot. So, same kind of thing, this is all related to EOS again, and so you should have received the information from Human Resources. Again, I think looking through it, you can see it, there's pillars, initiatives, and then kind of the goals underneath. A couple of the goals have been complete, there's a few that are coming up. I think a couple of things that I just did want to highlight, because you're not going to see this again in future. There's a few of them that have been completed. One of them was to make sure that we got our HR recruiting system in place. We used to pay for a different system. The payroll and HR system that we use to track people's addresses and compensation and so on. We were able to go to that system, part of that plan. So it unifies everything, it eliminates another login and so on. We made that switch. So that's one of the things that's listed under create stronger customer service tools. So that's one that was completed. The other one that was completed, and again, you're not going to see this in future ones, was related to enhancing the county's leadership skills. We spent some time before we really rolled out our performance evaluation system in 2022, just going through and providing some training to all of our leaders on the value of performance evaluations and so on and so forth. So those were the two things that did occur. The rest of the information is there. Glad to answer any questions if you have them. I'm timing myself to see if it be 3 minutes.
Questions?
I have no questions.
No, I'm good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to the discussion of potential resolution of the anti-crime plan referendum, which I believe is Brad.
Well, I didn't plan on presenting anything on this.
Or is that Josh?
Drafted a resolution at the request of the chair and county executive's office. Essentially, the idea behind this particular resolution, at this point in time, we're not asking for any action to be taken on it. It's a discussion point. And the purpose, as I understand it, was that because the county is so always fiscally aware and concerned how money is spent, and this particular referendum is going to potentially increase the tax levy, assuming it passes for the purpose of discussion anyway. The idea is that the effect of this referendum, if it passes, the dollar amount, and the impact of those dollars would come back to the county board annually for the board to review, to see if the dollars are being spent as they're intended to be spent, how are the programs working, and so on and so forth, and for you to evaluate those things. The idea is that I believe at the end of 7 years, the board could then determine at some point if it feels it's not, working the way it was intended, the board could cut the tax levy or take some other action to reduce the tax levy to make up for that money that is coming out in taxes. It's important to note that if this referendum passes, the county board cannot repeal the tax increase, but you could reduce the levy to address if you feel that it's too much taxes being taken. So that was the extent of my involvement in it.
Supervisor Murray?
This would be an annual review.
Yes, budget office will review it and bring it to the county board.
Basically, we're sundowning it on an annual basis for 7 years.
No, there'll be no sundowning. You cannot repeal this tax. What it would be is an opportunity for the board to review its impact and then determine whether or not you believe it's doing what it's supposed to do, what it was intended to do. And then if you decide that it's not working in the way you want it to, for whatever reason, you can reduce the tax levy. If you choose to do that, if the board chooses to do that, you cannot repeal the tax once it's passed.
But it does provide for reexamination of the whole.
Keeps it on your radar for
every year.
Right.
Exactly.
Because it's a big ask and you want to make sure that it's performing as it should.
And the options to those sitting boards would be if they want to reduce the funding for this, then that we'd lose staff. Would that be a theoretical result?
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I guess that's going to depend on how it's performing, what's going on in the sheriff's department, what the executive's office is intending. Any number of things, I'm sure, though. Okay. But I don't want to say for sure that.
Right, thank you.
Speculation.
Is it my understanding that we could start reducing the levy right away if we don't think it's appropriate, or is that after 7 years?
Well, you could do it at any time.
The future board.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused because you see, we can't lower the tax, but we can cut the levy.
Right, you're not going to build a tax. Right. Well, no.
Can't repeal it.
Oh, we can't repeal it, but we can lower the
So it'll still be collected.
Understood.
It'll still be collected.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that you wouldn't use it.
Gotcha. Okay. That's
So this is a discussion item. It's just to
Yeah.
get it on
Discussion,
everyone's radar.
Mhm.
Obviously, we can't do anything about it until after the referendum, so. But generally, we're thumbs up on it?
Yes,
yes.
Okay,
concur with the comment.
thank you.
Yep.
All right, our next,
So can I just clarify one thing?
absolutely.
So if you're a thumbs up on it, we will draft a resolution to come to this committee next month so that it's ready for county board in November. And then assuming the referendum passes, the referendum, or that resolution, will be on your agenda in November. So that can immediately be approved.
There's a resolution that's already been, like a rough draft of it, that's already in your packet.
Right,
Give you an idea. Yeah, that would be what we bring back unless something should change between now and the next meeting. But that's, what you see in the packet is what the resolution would
Okay.
look like.
so the intent is to be fully transparent that
Correct.
this is ready to go, and the day after the referendum, we'll know
Right?
one way or the other, and then we can put this into use the next day at the county board meeting.
Yes, and I would say what the intent from staff, and it's not real well written into the resolution, but I don't know how you can exactly say this either, is very much what you're seeing with these EOS reports in your different committees, be very much the same on it, at least an annual basis. The sheriff has to come back and explain, here's where we're at with hiring, here's where we're at with program effectiveness. He's got to put metrics together for what works and what doesn't work. On an annually, you're looking at it, and then whatever year you decide is the final review year, that county board makes a decision, do we keep the whole thing? Are there pieces that we cut the levy elsewhere, or we shift money around? That's really the intent, to keep it in the public discussion, keep a light shined on it. Did I frame that the right way?
Yeah. I was mentioning, I think you were out of the room, I hadn't planned on presenting on this because I drafted as I was requested to draft, and I knew you were more expert on the nuances of this, but the idea was that the board will have this placed back before it annually to review whether or not the intentions of this particular program are being met with this tax increase.
And I want to make sure that supervisors in general and the public know when we do town halls, we didn't do a sunset because a sunset is not realistic. Like, to put an end date on that referendum after you've hired all these positions is just bad governing.
Yeah.
So this is an alternative way to keep it in the limelight so that people are knowing it worked or didn't work, and then future boards have to make considerations for those.
And grade it out, is it effective or not?
That's right.
Did we spend the money well?
That is certainly the intent, yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
What you're saying is that the content of the referendum and how it shapes up would maintain kind of almost a fluid basis. If we find 2 years later something isn't working, let's change it and modify it then. We're still staying within the scope of the referendum, but we're making changes as we go along.
Yes, and that once if the referendum passes, that 3.6 million must go to the Washington County Anti-Crime Plan. So the question becomes, something isn't working exactly. We'll just use the mental health teams as an example. The money still has to go to the Washington County Anti-Crime Plan, but you certainly have the authority as a county board to shift levy around how you wish.
Divert it to this or that or whatever, staying.
Now there's a forced public policy discussion about, okay, that didn't work. Are we going to do something different? Are we going to cut levy elsewhere? That whole conversation can happen. Not that it couldn't without the review, but this forces it to happen.
Keeps it in the spotlight.
Exactly.
Thank you for clarifying.
Light is a disinfectant.
That's better.
Okay. So moving on, our budget tracking on Next Generation Housing Fund. I believe Deb is writing this.
So he's back from vacation.
Hello.
Hello.
As requested at a previous meeting, I provided you with a breakdown of the budget. And it shows the projects that are going on right now. With the projects in yellow are the ones that I wanted to talk about. The two top ones for Village of Jackson will be taken separately next on the agenda. And then the bottom one for the Village of Germantown, that was approved internally for hiring Vanderbilt and Associates to work on a new zoning ordinance based on next generation housing concepts.
So they do not have a site picked.
They actually have numerous sites that are selected, and a couple of them are in the village center. And that's why they're concentrating this new zoning ordinance in there and reflecting the next generation housing goals.
Okay. Any discussion?
None from here.
Okay, moving on.
Before, so, okay.
And the next item is the Stantec environmental due diligence.
And this item and the next agenda item are both related to the Village of Jackson pilot development, the 20-acre site just south of the Village Hall. We did a request for proposals for engineering services. We had a pre-proposal meeting at the beginning of August, and there was concern about waiting until we went through the RFP process and get a contract and before they started environmental due diligence. And so to keep the project moving quickly, I touched base with Stantec and they were able to move on, and they're working on this right now. Hope to be done by the end of September, which is good. And meanwhile, to get this approved, I did touch base with not only the chair and vice chair of the Next Generation Housing Committee, but also the chairman, to just make sure that it was okay to move forward with this and then bring this proposal back for approvals. It was approved last week at the Next Generation Housing Committee.
Any questions? I know we talked about this before, and I see you have already been blessed by the Village of Jackson and the committee, Housing Committee. So I think we have a consensus that we are good with it.
We're moving along. Yep.
Things are moving forward.
Yes.
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 Good to see.
Nice.
The next item is design, engineering, and infrastructure oversight services for the Village of Jackson.
Yes, we went through that qualifications-based process of reviewing the proposals. There was 3 proposals. As you mentioned, the Village of Jackson last week did approve moving ahead with SCH. They have an amazing amount of experience. We have a not to exceed funding approval for $297,652 for the design, engineering, and infrastructure construction oversight. If you'll notice on the last page, the recommendation, I would like to make a change. This did go before the Next Generation Housing Committee last week. I was not able to be there. And there was some discussion and I think a little confusion. So I was hoping that you would be able to make an adjustment to that recommendation. There were 2 conditions that were added by the Next Generation Housing Committee. The first one was that it would include We Energy's designs, and the second one was for as-built for final grade. This morning I had several discussions with the SCH engineers as well as the Village of Jackson administrator and engineer to clarify that as part of the $297,000, SCH would be completing a master grading plan. So that is included. But the We Energies design is not something that SCH would be doing. We Energies does their own design, and there would be a separate cost to that. It's typically about 10% of the cost of the service, which is about $2,500 per lot. And let's say there's 100 lots, that could be upwards of that 10% would be about $25,000 just as an estimate. So we anticipate that as we move forward with this project, that would either be funded through this, it would come back for another request, or it would be funded elsewhere. So I just wanted to be very clear that although we will be working with the Energies to do that design, that is not part of the $297,000.
Yeah, your 2,500 times 100 lots would be 250,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
$250,000. You mentioned 25,000. That.
It's 10% of 2,500 per lot.
Oh.
It's
Oh,
10%
okay.
design services.
Yes. Okay, I understand better. Thank you.
Other questions, discussion? Do we have consensus?
I think so.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good.
Thank you.
Our next item is item 5H, disclosure of potential conflict of interest on the family promise contract.
And before conversation starts, I'm going to recuse myself for this and for action item 6B.
Okay,
Of the firm I work for, okay?
okay. So I'll say in advance, after this, we'll go right to 6B so that he doesn't catch cold out in the hallway.
I think I'll survive.
Better warm up.
It's probably warmer out there.
Eileen?
Yeah. Okay. So we've been through something similar to this on a couple of occasions. First, state of Wisconsin regulations, because there are community development grant dollars in play here. County is required to determine whether or not the firm that we would intend to award the contract to, Hassinger, has any sort of conflicts of interest that would prohibit them from actually being able to accept that award. And to that end, they fill out a form called potential conflict of interest disclosure. And on that particular form, when they filled it out, they indicated that Supervisor Shadran is an employee of their company. So as a result of that, I had to conduct an investigation to determine whether or not that presents an actual conflict of interest that under state law or even county law would prohibit us from awarding that contract. So I did have an opportunity this morning to conduct that investigation. I spoke for a period of time with Supervisor Shadran. I did advise that when this conversation came up before committee today, that he in fact recuse himself from the room and take no part in this vote or any vote that involves this particular firm. What I was able to determine was that, cutting to the chase, there is no conflict of interest that would prohibit Hassinger from accepting the contract. While Supervisor Shadran is an employee, he's not an owner of the company, has no ownership interest in the company. He's not assigned to this project. He works in a separate division altogether from this particular division that'll handle this project. In fact, his office is even on a different floor than the division that will be handling this particular project. He receives no economic benefit directly or indirectly from an award of this contract to the firm. And yes, he does receive a wage from Hassinger, but it has nothing to do with this particular project. He's not getting any sort of bonuses, any sort of commissions. He did not assist in the preparation of the bid documents, bid submission. He was completely 100% hands-off, no involvement, and he'll have no involvement in the project going forward either. So when you look at our county code, which talks about when does a conflict of interest arise, does a public official derive a direct or indirect benefit for him or herself or family? Was there any sort of self-dealing going on here? Absolutely not. Nothing. He did not receive anything or promise anything in return for this particular contract. And assuming it gets awarded to Hassinger. Under state law, the same rules apply, and I even took a look at the federal regulations with regard to this particular arrangement, and I see nothing that would rise to the level that would create a conflict of interest. So for that reason, I did come to that conclusion. I have a memo that I submitted. It was late in the day today. I handed it out to you today because it took me some time to compile the information and to review the law. But we will make the recommendation from my office that there is no conflict of interest and you're free to award that contract to Hassinger if you so choose. Any questions about that?
Thank you. Any questions?
No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's safe to say we have a consensus?
We have a
Yes.
consensus, yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll move on to 6B, the award of the contract. Oh, Julie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realized in my haste today, I actually sent Michael the wrong site plan. I apologize for that. So I have the correct and current site plan up on the screen right now. Hopefully Supervisor Bossert is able to see that as well. What you have before you, as you recall back in June, you approved and considered approved the authorization to apply for the Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus edition of that and approving the matching funds coming from Family Promise of Washington County. Right now, we are moving along, as Brad mentioned, on the project. We're at the bidding stage of the project. Bids came in. Today, you'll see on your second page, one of the attachments was the bid sheet that came through. And as mentioned earlier, J.H. Hassinger was the low bid. What we're looking for approval today, an award of would be the low bid, base bid amount, which is the Northeast Family Wing, Northwest Apartment Wing, and site work. The amount of $2,584,115. If you look at the site plan, that is the salmon colored area to the north top of your screen. So that's that area that you're looking up there. And what we're looking at is you see the alternate bids. We're hoping that the Community Development Block Grant has additional funds available to it. later this year, hopefully within the next month to 2 months, they'll be able to actually complete the remaining portion, the southern portion below the yellow, the pink to the bottom, will be offices that will be supplied. I want to point out that that money may be available because other municipalities missed or don't think they're going to be able to meet the deadlines. And to that extent, I want to give out kudos to our staff here at Washington County for their hard work to meet those deadlines. Matt Furno was instrumental starting off Brad Stern and Eileen Evans when he was gone. Bill Kerr, and to point out that he does a fantastic job with this bid package. Originally, it was one bid package for everything you see there, and he had the foresight to break it out. If that would have been as one bid, we would have been stopped dead in our tracks, and that funds would have went to another county. So by his foresight to look at that, I really made this project possible. As well as Julie Driscoll, Human Services Director, and Kathy Wild in our Finance Department. So kudos to all of them for their hard work. We'll be looking for approval. If you look down below, motion to approve the base bid amount, and that was $2,584,1115 to J.H. Hossinger, and authorizing county staff to approve acceptance of any alternate bids, change orders, again, from funding from non-county sources. Any further grant monies would definitely probably have to come back to executive and most likely the county board as well. There's a lot of state regulations and federal regulations. So if we do that addition to the south, we'll probably still bring it back to you based on, again, state standards, which we've done in the past. So it'd just be if we have to do some minor changes as we go along. And there's no county funding involved in this. It's that the CDGB is a pass through. And then the matching funds are all paid for by Family Promise.
Before we enter in discussion, we need a motion and a second.
I'll move. Second.
Motion by Jody,
Mr. Bossert, I please.
Supervisor Schulteis, Supervisor Bossert. So, questions,
I
discussion?
have no questions on this.
Supervisor Bossert, anything?
No.
All right, well, then I'd look for a vote here. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Shadron can return.
It's not in the hallway.
So I believe Margie is presenting 6A, the capitalization policy change.
Okay, so, finance, we have a few finance policies in the county. This is one of them. We are just making a couple of small revisions. We try to review this on a pretty regular basis, at least annually in my office. When we were doing the review, we noticed a couple of pieces that were an oversight from from previous reviews that did not get incorporated. So one of the significant changes that you'll note is we added a section 8 regarding the Samaritan Health Center capital assets. Essentially, our policy states that we're not going to capitalize things that are less than $5,000. Samaritan, we are actually following the Wisconsin Medicaid Nursing Home guidance, which indicates that we should be capitalizing things with a value of at least $1,000 or more. So we have made an exception for Samaritan to capitalize things below the 5,000 so that we can capture some of that in our Medicaid reimbursement filings. So we have been doing that. It just wasn't documented in this policy. So that correction is just adding what we're currently doing. The other small change is noted in section 6. We're just basically increasing the estimated useful lives that we could allow for machinery and equipment. We had previously had 3 to 10 years, and we're increasing it from 3 to 15 years based on we've been working with Parks and Golf on some of their fiscal plans, and we found some assets that actually have a longer life than what we had originally anticipated. So no significant material effects or fiscal impact, just a straight kind of updating our wording. And
Accounting.
Yeah.
So this is simply a policy change. In order to discuss, we should have a motion and a second.
Also move.
Supervisor Mary, I'll make the second. So do we have discussion? questions? None?
I think it's pretty well laid out here in the briefing and the materials
is.
that are presented to me. It's all here.
Right.
I have no question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Margie.
Thank you.
So we have an ordinance repealing the County Library Services Board.
I had submitted a report sort of explaining the rationale behind this and also a copy of the proposed repeal. What it really boils down to is we have a very old and outdated library plan. It goes back to 1984, and it's really time to update that plan. Our recommendation at the end of the day is eventually that we work with the clerk's office and put up sort of a game plan together and maybe at some point bring it back to you to talk about how we get that done. But basically what happens here is, as we did the research on this, we determined that we don't need to have a library board because quite plainly, the statutes have changed a lot through the years since this was first put into place here in Washington County. But bottom line is Washington County doesn't manage or provide library services. We contract for those things. And the way the statute is written, because we don't provide them directly, we don't have a library service, but we're not really supposed to by statute. That's only if we offer the services directly ourselves. So therefore, our code is really out of shape, out of date, and we have an extra layer of bureaucracy we really just don't need. So that's the basis for why this request is being made. It's essentially outdated law, outdated code.
So we need a motion in a second.
Mr. Showman, have a comment?
We have a motion from Supervisor Bossert. We have a second.
I'll second.
Supervisor Mary on the second. And I'll also add that I had a conversation with Dan Stuffle, former county board supervisor for many years, who was on the library board. And he said they never intended to comply with Chapter 43 in the first place, but it was kind of what we did, so.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know as well, I have had a conversation with the librarians throughout the county about this, and we have also notified members of the library board. The conversation with the librarians happened first before we even proceeded to make sure that, they didn't have any concerns about going down this path. The librarian here in West Bend in particular was very helpful from some of his experience in previous counties, and actually suggested that we go down this path and considering doing this to streamline it and really to create an opportunity for a better relationship with the librarians directly with the county board. If you don't know this, especially in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, it's been a little rocky with the librarians. Our levy has held flat, the library levy, as long as I've been with the county, and my guess is probably before that as well. So I think this will be a good opportunity for them to get some face time at least on an annual basis, and maybe even quarterly with billing, so that you're at least hearing what is going on in the library system and what those tax dollars are paying for specifically. So they were very supportive of going down this path, and we checked with that before we even started the conversation and investigation.
Discussion?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And it does hold the Monarch Library Board harmless. It's a separate entity. So we still have board members that are appointed to that board, which is a separate entity about the larger library system.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, we basically had an unnecessary dual system going on here. We're part of the Monarch system where all of these things, these services take place, yet we had this library board, which really didn't fit into that model.
Didn't really.
Right, so from a practical standpoint, the way I see it, really has no effect on the public or the people. They won't know it's going to change because we're doing this ordinance. It just cuts out this extra layer of bureaucracy.
Did our library board have any power anyway to do anything or affect any change? Or, I mean, most of it went to the librarians anyway, right?
So,
Their statutory duties and powers.
sure,
Really what was happening was invoices were being approved.
yeah,
The most that happened in my tenure as a veteran is we had 2 requests for taking net new construction. And out of hand, they were completely rejected, and that's part of what I was alluding to.
yeah, okay,
It made for a bad relationship because it was a board with essentially no power, who's not happy, and you can imagine what those meetings just turned into.
sure,
It was not productive.
understood.
Right.
Logical.
Any other discussion?
No, sir.
Having none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Our next meeting is October 19th, 2022 at 4 PM. This meeting's